I don't know about you guys, but I like food. I also like fights. So by that token, I also enjoy food fights. What I don't particularly like is when one set of food groups starts a war with another set of food groups and start blowing up the whole world. In theory. The whole premise of Organic Panic is that the wholesome, magical, nature-loving fruits and vegetables are in a war with the technology and industry backing meats and cheeses, and as such, battle lines have been drawn and crossed between these bitter rivals. The meats and cheeses are living the big life in the cities, and the fruits and vegetables are hiding out in nature, being hunted down by their enemy. But now, the fruits and vegetables are fighting back, and the meats and cheeses, they aren't taking too kindly to that. At the start of the game, the fruits and vegetables are gathered in a secret base concocting a plan to win this war for good. Led by an old, maybe wise apple, they're looking for a slew of friends and items to help them turn the tide in their favor. The story is more involved than that, but in the interest of keeping spoilers to a minimum, that's all I'll mention. Yeah, even on a physics-based puzzler platformer, I will try to keep spoilers low. I love story in a game, no matter how big or small, and I appreciate the same care taken on the flip side. So when you do get story told to you, it's done at the beginning of each stage in a comic strip intro, and the story is kind of a unique one, but not necessarily in setup, but more in its execution. Throughout all storytelling mediums, there are plenty of tales of a war between two factions, but how often are they showcased between food groups? Now, I admit I haven't done any research on the matter, and I'd venture to guess it's being not very much. Now, when it comes to the comic strip story dump, I like the idea, but in the end, the result isn't always a hit. Sometimes it's hard to follow what's going on at first, and some panels just seem disjointed. Some have multiple people speaking, and the way the lines are written, it can be confusing to know who's talking and to whom they're talking to. Take a couple of seconds and you'll suss it out, but it's not something you should be having to do to begin with. Now, other times, the lines just seem weirdly worded. It's not a major issue by any stretch, but these are things I noticed immediately and felt were off about it. Now, in games like these, I often wonder just how many people are actually paying attention to the story, so this may not even be something you notice, but it's something I noticed. There are 11 stages with 10 levels in each one, with a final boss battle level that I'll talk about in a bit. Each stage focuses on a different motif, like volcano, beach, jungle, etc., and graphically the models look good and the backgrounds pop. The various fixtures you interact with look and feel nice too. There's nothing revolutionary here, but there's also nothing less than good either. The game also features multiplayer modes for co-op and versus, and each mode has its own slate of levels to tackle, added on to the bonus levels that arise after beating the adventure mode, all bringing the total count between modes to over 200. Now that's a lot of smoked meats and mashed veg going down. Now if you get stuck, there's a limited amount of levels you can optionally skip to get over those tough humps that you may be finding yourself facing. Then, if you beat the level later, you get that skip back. That's pretty neat. And you want another good thing about the levels? Very few of them are timed. That's even better. In the adventure and co-op levels of Organic Panic, the main goal at the start of each level is to get to the portal at the end of the map, which can be anywhere in said map, all while trying to accomplish certain goals between gaining you either a bronze, which is just making to the portal, silver, which is accomplishing 2 goals, or gold, which is all 3 goals, star. So, bronze, silver, and gold star. Now, the goals are completion, getting the large crystal in each level, which is more important than you realize, but I'll have more on that later, and killing all the enemies. You also have a level score, but I honestly don't know how that's calculated. If the game tells you, I missed it and I couldn't find it anywhere else. I thought it maybe was based off of time, but I tested that and got more points a few times just sitting there than I did speeding through it. Oh, and it features a quick restart button. Actually, it's 2 buttons, in fact, which is great news for people like me. So, I guess they added a second one to make up for not having that option in 101 Ways to Die. Such nice devs. Each of the fruits and vegetables have their own unique magical abilities, and you'll need to collect little blue crystals to be able to perform said magics. They each have their own size, shape, and speed, so just like in real life, not every food is created equal. For example, the kiwi can swim and jump higher, but the carrot shoots fire and can climb. Each is suited to tackle different areas, and on the levels you're tasked with swapping at will between them, knowing their strengths and weaknesses pays off. Especially when you need to destroy something, because, as I think I forgot to mention, the levels are destructible, a fact that both works for you and most definitely against you. The levels are also littered with power-ups as well as enemies. One power-up gives you a second magical ability, while another speeds you up. You can also get invincibility, which is sometimes a must. Each has a time limit, and if you grab more than one at a time, they stack, so pay attention to the countdown because you don't want to lose that invulnerability smack dab in the middle of a lava pit. Or maybe you do. Some people just like that shit. The sounds you'll hear in Organic Panic are actually really catchy. Sometimes they're funky, sometimes they're frantic, sometimes they're mellow, and sometimes it sounds as if you're playing a food-inspired spy caper. There's a lot of diversity here, and it's mostly satisfying to listen to. And the voices of the characters are cute, which is always a plus for me. If you pay attention to anything I do, you know cute always wins with me. Just like any other puzzle game I've covered, if you get stuck, take a break. I think that's sound advice for most games, but puzzlers in general. It's helped me, and it may just help you, because this game can get really, really frustrating, especially if you're going for the gold in each level. Hell, sometimes even getting to silver or bronze is a friggin' disaster. But if you persevere, you'll eventually make it out alive. Just not maybe with the rank you were looking for. The multiplayer modes can give this title longevity too. The co-op levels aren't as vast as Adventure Mode, but there's a healthy amount to sink your collective teeth into for up to 4 people. Now, the Versus mode is the one that strays a bit from the normal formula, and you have 3 different games to play here, again, up to 4 players. The first one is Acorns, where you collect acorns to win. Target is you collect a target and try to hold on to it while gaining points for staying alive. And Frags is your standard deathmatch. Each mode turns into chaos, especially if you turn some settings up, and they feature mutations partway through a match to hinder the players. And if they aren't random, they certainly felt like it, and I have no idea how they triggered otherwise. I was partial to the Acorns and Target matches. I just had more fun collecting than I did just only killing, but if you're a fan of deathmatch, you'll like the deathmatch as well. Okay, so remember when I said I'd get into the final boss stage? Remember also when I referenced how collecting the large crystals in each level will be a benefit to you, not just in ranking? Well, in the final level of the game, it's a boss battle in space against the boss of the meats and cheeses, who's in a heavily fortified spaceship. A ship that has plenty of ways to annihilate you in the small map, with one-hit kills not being uncommon. Naturally. You also get use of every single fruits and vegetable that you have, with a seemingly endless magic bar, because there are things that drop, whatever, you'll see if you play it. You also have lives in this level, unlike the rest of the adventure mode, and if you die here, you just restart right where you were. Here, your lives get directly based off how many large crystals you collected throughout the adventure mode, so for every 10 crystals you've collected, you get 1 life. So, knowing that now, those secondary objectives don't sound so secondary, do they? You should also know that this fight can take a while to finish because that ship is a tank and has a crazy health bar. You'll die. A lot. Now, as I said, you can swap between any character at will, but I didn't really find any but one to be effective, and I'll let you figure that one out on your own because, who knows, maybe I just couldn't figure out the best method. The point I want to make here is with this level that it feels very out of place. It's mechanically different than what you've spent over 100 levels previously doing, to this extent, and it's not like there were boss battles littered here and there throughout the adventure mode to train you on what to expect. This is the only one, and as such it felt weird to end on. Now, I appreciate what the devs were trying to do here, it just unfortunately didn't work for me in the end. As for the rest of the downsides or nitpicks, here they are in all their glory. I noticed some slowdown and frame rate issues at the start of a level, sometimes continuing throughout, especially if coming back after a few minutes of waiting on a menu or coming back from one of the system's rest modes, but it happened more so on the Xbox One version than it did on PS4, though it was there on both. I never noticed any screen tearing though, so that's a plus. I also wish you could zoom in a bit more on some of the levels, especially the big ones. It would help to not only be able to maneuver throughout the level, but also being able to see the power-up timers a little bit better. They aren't super tiny, but when things get really hectic, I found it hard sometimes to just focus on the timer, costing me precious progress or causing me to die. Another thing that can cost you, random angles within the level. Being a physics game, of course getting crushed by something should hurt or kill you, but when you're climbing or making your way through a tight squeeze, hitting an angle or crevice in a wall shouldn't instantly kill you. And it happened more than once, and way more than I would have liked, so that was disappointing. And the final boss fight's music, and their sound effects within, they would just disappear and reappear at random. If this was designed to do this because, in space there's no sound, it didn't work in this game's favor at all. It was more annoying than anything else, and I don't think it was programmed that way because it was really disjointed. Finally, the controls, while not bad by any means, were sometimes a hassle. Now, this was more apparent on the PlayStation 4 than the Xbox One. It just felt like the sticks on each system moved the characters just a little bit differently than the other. It's not a huge difference, but it was something I felt that was off switching back and forth between versions. Now, obviously, if you don't plan on playing both versions, you likely won't find much issue in the swapping back and forth, so mileage is obviously going to vary greatly with that one. Aside from any of the nitpicks and unfortunate realities of the game, I did have fun with Organic Panic and everything the game had to offer me. The load times were good, the colorful graphics kept things engaging visually, and the fun lasted until the end. Wanting to punch a wall sometimes, I include that. You're likely not going to find your game of the year here, but you certainly won't find a dud either. If you're into physics-based games, or just puzzle games in general, you'll find fun playing with your food, even though we're constantly told as kids not to do so.
Meanwhile, down the road from this...
Oh, they left us out.